There's a kind of person who lies awake at 2 a.m. not because of insomnia, but because their mind simply refuses to stop. They replay conversations from 3 years ago. They question decisions most people make in seconds. They see patterns where others see nothing. And they feel everything deeper than they should. If you've ever been told, "You think too much," this video is about you. Today, we're going to break down the psychology of deep thinkers, what makes their brains different, why they feel so misunderstood, and the hidden cost of a mind that never turns off. And honestly, some of this might be uncomfortable to hear. Let's get into it. Let's get one thing straight. Being a deep thinker is not the same as being smart. That's the first misconception people have. A deep thinker is someone whose default mode of processing the world is through reflection, analysis, and internal questioning. While most people experience an event and move on, a deep thinker experiences an event and then replays it, dissects it, reframes it, and tries to extract meaning from it. Psychologist Elaine Aron calls this trait depth of processing. It's one of the 4 core pillars of what she identified as the highly sensitive person. But you don't have to be highly sensitive to be a deep thinker. The two overlap. They're not the same thing. Neuroscience tells us something fascinating here. In deep thinkers, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning, reasoning, and self-reflection, tends to be more active during rest. That means even when they're doing nothing, their brain is working. It's analyzing. It's searching. Most people's brains go into standby mode when idle. A deep thinker's brain goes into investigation mode, and that difference changes everything. Here's where it gets interesting and a little dark. A 2015 study published in the journal Nature Neuroscience found that people who score higher on measures of analytical thinking show increased connectivity between the default mode network, the part of your brain active during daydreaming and self-reflection, and the executive control network, which handles problem solving. In simple terms, deep thinkers have a superhighway between their imagination and their logic. These two systems talk to each other constantly. For most people, these networks take turns. For deep thinkers, they run simultaneously. This is why a deep thinker can be in the middle of a party, laughing with friends, and simultaneously analyzing whether the friendship is genuine, whether they're being perceived correctly, and what the meaning of the entire social interaction actually is. They're not trying to do this. They can't help it. The wiring is always on. And this is where the exhaustion begins. Let's get specific. Psychologists have identified consistent behavioral patterns in deep thinkers. Here are 7 of them. And be honest with yourself about how many you recognize. Number 1, you need meaning in everything. Small talk doesn't just bore you, it drains you. You want to know why someone believes what they believe. You want conversations that go somewhere. Surface level interactions feel physically uncomfortable. Number 2, you're a chronic overthinker. You don't just make a decision. You evaluate 47 possible outcomes, predict which one will go wrong, and then feel anxious about all of them before anything even happens. Number 3, you feel lonely even in a crowd. This is one of the most painful signs. You can be surrounded by people who love you and still feel fundamentally alone, because the depth of your internal world doesn't match the depth of the conversations around you. Number 4, you're highly self-aware. You know your flaws, sometimes too well. You constantly monitor your own behavior, question your own motives, and hold yourself to standards that others don't even notice. Number 5, you're drawn to philosophy, psychology, and existential questions. Why are we here? Isn't a random thought for you. It's Tuesday afternoon. Number 6, you absorb other people's emotions. Deep thinkers tend to have heightened emotional processing. You walk into a room and you can feel the tension. You pick up on micro-expressions most people miss. It's a gift, and it's overwhelming. Number 7, you struggle with decisions. Not because you're indecisive, but because you see too many sides. Every option has weight. Every choice has consequences you can already predict. So you freeze. If you recognize 5 or more of these, keep watching. Because what comes next explains why your life often feels harder than it should. Let's be honest here. Most content about deep thinkers romanticizes it. Oh, you're so rare, so special, so gifted. And yes, there are advantages. But the psychological reality is far more complicated. Deep thinkers are disproportionately affected by anxiety, depression, and existential dread. And the research backs this up. A study from King's College London found a strong correlation between high verbal intelligence, a hallmark of deep thinkers, and generalized anxiety disorder. The theory? The same neural pathways that allow deep thinkers to process information with such richness also amplify threat detection. You don't just see problems, you see problems within problems within problems. Carl Jung described this as the curse of consciousness. The more aware you are, the more you suffer. Not because the world is worse for you, but because you see more of it. The ugliness, the contradictions, the lies people tell themselves. And here's what nobody talks about. Deep thinkers are exhausted not by what they do, but by what they think. The mental energy required to constantly process, analyze, and reflect is enormous. By the end of a normal day, a deep thinker has run a mental marathon, and nobody around them can see it. This is why deep thinkers often withdraw, not because they don't like people, but because their brain needs recovery time that others simply don't require. If this video is hitting different for you, if you're sitting there recognizing yourself in every single point, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We go deep on psychology, human behavior, and the patterns that shape how we think and feel. And honestly, the people in this community get it. They're deep thinkers too. All right, let's keep going, because the next part is where it gets really uncomfortable. Deep thinkers experience a unique kind of loneliness that's almost impossible to explain to someone who hasn't felt it. It's not about being alone. Many deep thinkers actually prefer solitude. The loneliness comes from feeling fundamentally misunderstood, like you're speaking a language that nobody else learned. Psychologists call this existential isolation. The awareness that no matter how close you get to another person, there's a gap between your inner world and theirs that can never fully be bridged. Everyone experiences this to some degree. Deep thinkers feel it acutely, constantly, and this creates a painful cycle. The deep thinker craves connection, real, meaningful, soul-level connection. But most interactions feel shallow, so they withdraw. And in withdrawing, they become more isolated. And in isolation, they think more. And the more they think, the harder it becomes to relate to people who don't think that way. Here's the brutal truth. Deep thinkers often push people away. Not because they want to, but because the vulnerability required to truly let someone into their inner world feels terrifying. They've learned, often through painful experience, that most people don't have the patience or the depth to meet them where they are. So they build walls. Intellectual walls, emotional walls, and behind those walls, they're lonelier than ever. Relationships are where deep thinkers face their biggest paradox. On one hand, when a deep thinker loves, they love with an intensity that most people have never experienced. They remember every detail. They analyze your needs before you even express them. They think about the relationship constantly, how to improve it, how to protect it, how to make it deeper. On the other hand, this can be destructive. Deep thinkers tend to overthink their partner's words, actions, and silences. A delayed text response isn't just a delayed text response. It's a potential sign of disinterest, which triggers a cascade of analysis. What did I say wrong? Are they pulling away? Should I address it or wait? Attachment theory research shows that deep thinkers frequently develop anxious attachment styles. They're hypervigilant to signs of emotional withdrawal because their brain is wired to detect subtle changes. And in a relationship, that wiring can create conflict where none exists. The healthiest thing a deep thinker can do in relationships? Communicate their inner world out loud instead of processing it alone. The problem is, that requires a level of trust that takes deep thinkers much longer to build than most people. If you're in a relationship with a deep thinker, or you are one, understand this. Patience isn't optional. It's the foundation. All right, we've covered the dark side. Now let's talk about the power. Because here's what's true. Virtually every major advancement in human civilization came from a deep thinker. Einstein didn't discover relativity by being a fast thinker. He discovered it by being a deep one, sitting with a single question for years, turning it over and over until the answer revealed itself. Nikola Tesla, Virginia Woolf, Carl Jung, Dostoevsky, All deep thinkers. All tortured by their own minds. All change the world. Deep thinkers see what others miss. They question what others accept. They create what others can't imagine. And that's not flattery. That's documented psychology. Research from Harvard's Graduate School of Education found that individuals with high reflective capacity, deep thinkers, score significantly higher on measures of creativity, emotional intelligence, and moral reasoning. They don't just think more, they think better. The key is learning to direct the depth instead of drowning in it. And that brings us to the final section. If you're a deep thinker, you don't need to be fixed. But you do need strategies, because your mind will eat itself alive without them. Strategy 1. Scheduled thinking time. This sounds strange, but it works. Give your brain a designated window, 30 minutes a day, where you're allowed to spiral. Outside that window, practice redirecting. Cognitive behavioral therapists call this worry scheduling, and studies show it reduces rumination by up to 35%. Strategy 2. Externalize your thoughts. Journal. Voice record. Talk to someone. The moment a thought leaves your head and enters the physical world, it loses its power. Deep thinkers suffer most when their thoughts are trapped in a loop with no exit. Give them an exit. Strategy 3. Find your people. You don't need 100 friends. You need 2 or 3 who can match your depth. People who don't flinch when you start a sentence with, "I've been thinking about the nature of consciousness." Those people exist. Find them. Protect those relationships. Strategy 4. Move your body. This is boring advice. It's also non-negotiable. Physical movement interrupts the default mode network, the same network that drives your endless reflection. Running, swimming, lifting, whatever gets you out of your head and into your body. It's the simplest reset button deep thinkers have access to. Strategy 5. Accept the depth. Stop wishing you were different. Stop envying people who seem carefree. Your depth is not a malfunction. It's a feature of a mind that was built to understand reality at a level most people never access. The goal isn't to think less. It's to think with purpose. Deep thinkers don't just live life, they interrogate it. And that takes courage that most people will never understand. If this video made you feel seen, if you finally feel like someone described the inside of your head, share it with someone who needs to hear this. And subscribe if you want more content that goes beyond the surface. Because in a world that rewards speed, shallow opinions, and instant answers, the people who stop, reflect, and think deeply, they're the ones who actually move us forward. Take care of that mind. It's more powerful than you know.